Have you ever wondered what makes a leader truly great? What forges an ordinary person into a figure who changes the course of history? Today, we journey back in time to explore the life of a man who rose from the humblest of beginnings to lead a nation through its darkest hour, Abraham Lincoln. From the stark log cabin where his story began to the hallowed halls of the White House, Lincoln's life is a testament to resilience, principle, and the enduring power of a unified nation. Born in a one-room log cabin in Kentucky in 1809, Lincoln's early life was one of hardship and labor. His family were pioneers, constantly moving, carving out a life on the American frontier. Formal schooling was a luxury he rarely had, perhaps totaling less than a year in his entire childhood. But a fire burned within young Abe, relentless thirst for knowledge. By the flickering light of the fireplace, he devoured every book he could get his hands on. He taught himself, poring over classics, the Bible, and law books. His mind a fertile ground for the great ideas that would later define his presidency. He worked as a rail splitter, a shopkeeper, a postmaster, each job teaching him about the everyday people he would one day lead. This frontier upbringing instilled in him a profound sense of humility, empathy, and an unshakable belief in the value of hard work. Lincoln came of age, so did the nation struggle with its own identity. He moved to Illinois, where he began his career as a self-taught lawyer. His sharp wit, compelling logic, and honest reputation quickly earned him respect. He was known as Honest Abe, a nickname that stuck with him for life. Politics called to him, and he served in the Illinois state legislature and later in the U.S. House of Representatives. But it was the escalating crisis over slavery that propelled him onto the national stage. In 1858, his series of debates against Stephen Douglas for a U.S. Senate seat became legendary. Though he lost the election, his powerful arguments against the expansion of slavery made him a leading voice in the newly formed Republican Party. He argued that a house divided against itself cannot stand. A prophetic warning about the storm that was gathering. Just 2 years later, in 1860, the nation was at a breaking point. Lincoln's principled stand on slavery resonated with voters in the North, and he won the presidency. His election was the final trigger for the South. Before he even took the oath of office in March 1861, 7 Southern states had seceded from the Union, with more to follow. Lincoln faced an unprecedented crisis. The very survival of the United States was at stake. His inaugural address was a plea for unity, an appeal to the better angels of our nature. But the path to war was now unavoidable. The cannons that fired on Fort Sumter a month later signaled the start of the American Civil War, the bloodiest conflict in the nation's history. For the next 4 years, Lincoln shouldered a burden few could imagine. He was not just a president, he was a commander-in-chief in a brutal, relentless war. He spent countless hours in the War Department's telegraph office, monitoring battlefield reports and communicating directly with his generals. He faced immense pressure, military setbacks, and political opposition. He walked the halls of the White House late at night, the weight of a divided nation on his shoulders. He visited army camps, shook hands with soldiers, and grieved for the staggering loss of life. Through it all, his resolve never wavered. His singular goal was to preserve the Union, to ensure that the great experiment of American democracy did not perish. But as the war raged on, Lincoln's purpose deepened. The conflict was not just about preserving the Union, it was about defining its soul. On January 1, 1863, he took a monumental step and issued the Emancipation Proclamation. While it didn't free all slaves at once, it was a turning point. It declared that slaves in the rebellious Confederate States were thenceforward and forever free. The proclamation transformed the war into a moral crusade for human freedom. It opened the door for African American soldiers to enlist in the Union Army, and nearly 200,000 would serve with courage, fighting for their own liberation and the future of the nation. It was a bold, strategic, and profoundly moral act that began the process of ending the institution of slavery in America. In November of that same year, Lincoln traveled to a small town in Pennsylvania that had been the site of a horrific battle just months earlier. The dedication of a new national cemetery. He delivered what would become the most famous speech in American history, the Gettysburg Address. In just 272 words, spoken in about 2 minutes, Lincoln redefined the meaning of the war and the nation itself. He spoke of a new birth of freedom and a government of the people, by the people, for the people. He honored the sacrifice of the soldiers and rededicated the living to the unfinished work of creating a truly equal and unified nation. It was a masterpiece of oratory, a profound meditation on democracy and sacrifice that continues to inspire people around the world. After years of devastating conflict, the tide finally turned. In April 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, effectively ending the Civil War. The Union was preserved. Lincoln's focus immediately shifted to healing the fractured nation. His second inaugural address, delivered just a month earlier, had set the tone with malice toward none, with charity for all. He envisioned a generous and swift reconstruction, a peace built on reconciliation, not revenge. He worked tirelessly to pass the 13th Amendment, which would permanently abolish slavery throughout the United States, cementing the war's moral victory into law. But Lincoln would not live to see the nation fully heal. On the evening of April 14, 1865, just 5 days after the surrender at Appomattox, he and his wife Mary attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. A Confederate sympathizer, John Wilkes Booth, slipped into the presidential box and shot the president. Abraham Lincoln died the next morning. The news plunged the nation, which had just begun to celebrate the war's end, into a state of profound shock and grief. A wave of mourning swept across the country as Lincoln's funeral train made a long journey back to Springfield, Illinois, the people he had led now lining the tracks to pay their last respects. Though his life was cut tragically short, Abraham Lincoln's legacy is immortal. He is remembered not just for saving the Union and ending slavery, but for his profound wisdom, his deep humanity, and his unwavering belief in the principles of liberty and equality. The Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., stands as a powerful tribute. a temple to the man who guided the nation through its greatest trial. His words and his actions continue to remind us that even in our darkest moments, we have the capacity to appeal to our better angels and strive for a more perfect union. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of one of history's most remarkable leaders. If you found this story inspiring, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history.